There are moments in life when everything around you suddenly begins to change. People start leaving your life. Plans that once seemed certain begin falling apart. Doors you expected to open suddenly close. And in the middle of it all, you may find yourself asking one question: why is this happening? But what many people don't realize is that when God is about to change your life in a powerful way, there is often a process that happens first. A season that feels confusing, a season that feels uncertain, and sometimes even a season that feels painful. But that season may actually be preparing you for something far greater than you can see right now. And if you've been noticing certain things happening in your life lately, this message may not be a coincidence. Because before God changes your life, these signs often appear first. The truth is, throughout the Bible and throughout the lives of many believers, major change rarely begins with comfort. In fact, when God is preparing someone for a new season, the process often begins with moments that feel confusing or even difficult. Things that once felt stable may begin shifting, situations you once depended on may start falling apart, and the direction you thought your life was heading may suddenly begin changing. At first, many people see these moments as setbacks. They assume something is going wrong. They wonder if they made a mistake or if they somehow lost their way. But many times, these moments are not signs of failure. They are signs of preparation. Because before God transforms your life externally, He often begins working internally. He begins changing your perspective, your priorities, your direction. And during that process, there are certain signs that begin appearing. Signs that a new season may be approaching. Signs that the life you have known so far may be preparing to shift into something completely different. And the first sign often begins with something many people experience, but rarely understand. One of the first signs that God may be preparing to change your life is when certain people begin leaving your life. Sometimes this happens suddenly. A relationship that once felt strong begins to weaken. Communication becomes less frequent, and the connection you once shared slowly begins to fade. Other times, the change happens much more quietly. You may notice that conversations no longer feel the same. You may feel like you and someone close to you are slowly moving in different directions. Or you may sense that the bond you once had is no longer as strong as it used to be. At first, this can feel confusing and even painful. Many people begin questioning what went wrong. They replay conversations in their mind. They wonder if they said something wrong or if they somehow caused the distance. But sometimes the reason people leave our lives has nothing to do with conflict, failure, or mistakes. Sometimes it happens because their role in our journey has already been fulfilled. Throughout life, different people walk beside us during different seasons. Some are meant to support us during difficult moments. Some are meant to challenge us and help us grow. And some are meant to teach us lessons that shape the person we eventually become. But when God begins preparing you for a new chapter, the people connected to your previous season may not always continue into the next one, and so, without force, without clear explanation, and sometimes without warning, they begin to drift away. While this can feel painful in the moment, many people later realize that certain relationships had to end in order for new opportunities, new connections, and new directions to enter their lives. Because sometimes before God brings the right people into your future, He first removes the ones who were only meant to be part of your past. Another sign that God may be preparing to change your life is when you begin experiencing a sudden increase in spiritual battles. These moments can show up in many different ways. You may begin feeling overwhelmed by doubt. Thoughts of fear or discouragement may appear more often than usual. Situations that once felt simple may suddenly start feeling heavy or complicated. At times, it may even feel like obstacles are appearing everywhere you turn. Plans begin falling apart. Unexpected problems show up at the worst possible moments, and challenges begin appearing in areas of life that once felt stable. During moments like this, many people start wondering why everything suddenly feels harder. They question why things seem to be going wrong all at once. They may even begin questioning their faith or wondering if they somehow lost their way. But throughout history, moments of spiritual struggle have often appeared right before major breakthroughs. When someone is moving closer to the purpose God has prepared for them, resistance often increases, because growth rarely happens without challenge. Just as physical strength develops through resistance, spiritual strength is often built through seasons of testing. These battles are not always meant to stop you. Many times they are meant to strengthen you. They push you to rely on faith in ways you may never have experienced before. They teach patience, they deepen trust, and they shape the resilience needed for the next chapter of your life. While these seasons can feel exhausting, many believers later look back and realize that those struggles were not random, they were preparation, because before God elevates someone into a new season, He often strengthens them through trials, and sometimes the very battles that feel like obstacles today are quietly building the strength you will need for what comes next. Another powerful sign that God may be preparing to change your life is when certain doors begin closing around you. These are often opportunities you once believed were meant for you. Plans that once seemed certain may suddenly stop working. Situations that once felt promising may begin falling apart, and paths you expected to walk may suddenly become impossible to continue. At first, these moments can feel extremely frustrating. You may begin wondering why something you worked hard for is no longer moving forward. You may question why an opportunity you were counting on suddenly disappears. And sometimes it can feel like every direction you try to move in somehow becomes blocked. During seasons like this, many people assume that something has gone wrong. They believe they have failed, they think they made the wrong decisions, or they begin blaming themselves for things that are no longer working. But sometimes a closed door is not rejection, sometimes it is direction. Because when God begins preparing you for a new season, He may start closing the paths that are not aligned with where your life is meant to go next. The job you thought you needed may fall apart. The opportunity you expected may disappear. The situation you believed would shape your future may suddenly end. And while these moments can feel discouraging in the moment, they often serve a deeper purpose. Because if those doors had remained open, you might have continued walking down a path that was never meant to lead you to the life God is preparing for you. Closed doors can feel like setbacks at first, but many times they are actually protection. They prevent you from settling into something that is smaller than what is ahead of you. And sometimes the doors that close today are simply making space for a completely different door. One that you cannot see yet, but one that may change your life in ways you never expected. Another sign that God may be preparing to change your life is when you begin experiencing a season of isolation. This doesn't always mean you are physically alone, but internally it may begin to feel like very few people truly understand what you are going through. You may notice that the support you once depended on is no longer there in the same way. Conversations that once felt easy may start feeling distant. People who once shared your interests or direction may no longer relate to the path you feel drawn toward. And slowly, it may begin to feel like you are walking a road that very few people around you can see or understand. For many people, this season of isolation can be one of the most difficult parts of spiritual growth, because human beings naturally desire connection and reassurance from others. When that support begins to fade, it can feel uncomfortable, confusing, and sometimes even discouraging. But throughout history, many spiritual journeys have included seasons of solitude, moments where individuals were separated from familiar environments so they could grow, reflect, and gain clarity about the path ahead. These seasons are not always meant to punish you. Often, they are meant to remove distractions. They create space for deeper reflection. They allow you to hear your thoughts more clearly, and most importantly, they create space for a stronger connection with God. When life becomes quieter, it becomes easier to recognize the direction your heart is being pulled toward. While these moments of isolation can feel uncomfortable at first, many people later realize they were necessary. Because sometimes before God brings new people into your life, He allows a season where you must first learn to walk forward on your own. And that quiet season often becomes the moment where your strength, your clarity, and your faith begin to grow in ways they never could have before. Another sign that God may be preparing to change your life is when your faith begins to be tested in ways you may not have experienced before. During this season, situations may arise that challenge your patience, your trust, and your belief that things will eventually work out. You may find yourself waiting longer than you expected for answers. Plans that once seemed clear may suddenly feel uncertain. Opportunities you hoped for may take longer to appear, and the path ahead may begin to feel less predictable than it once did. In moments like this, it can be easy to feel discouraged. You may begin asking questions like, why is this taking so long? Why does it feel like nothing is moving forward? Why do I feel like I'm standing still while everything around me continues to change? But many believers eventually realize that these seasons of waiting are often where faith grows the most, because faith is not simply believing when everything is clear. Faith is trusting even when the outcome has not yet been revealed. It is continuing to move forward even when the path ahead feels uncertain. It is believing that something meaningful is being prepared, even when you cannot yet see it. During seasons of testing, patience begins to grow, trust becomes deeper, and the relationship between you and God begins to strengthen in ways that may not have been possible during easier moments. These tests are not always meant to discourage you. Many times they are meant to prepare you, because before someone steps into a new season of life, their faith often needs to become stronger than it was before. And sometimes the waiting you are experiencing right now is not a delay, it is preparation for something greater that is still being built behind the scenes. Another sign that God may be preparing to change your life is when you begin noticing small confirmations appearing in unexpected ways. These confirmations are not always dramatic. In fact, they are often very subtle. You may hear a message that speaks directly to something you've been thinking about. You may read a passage or hear a piece of advice that suddenly feels deeply relevant to your situation. Or you may notice certain themes or ideas appearing repeatedly in your life. At first, these moments may seem like simple coincidences, but over time, they begin happening more frequently. You may begin hearing the same message from different places. A conversation with someone unexpectedly reinforces something you were already considering, or a situation appears that seems to point you toward a specific direction. These moments can feel small, but they often bring a sense of clarity. They remind you that you are not completely alone in the process. They create a quiet sense that something meaningful may be unfolding behind the scenes. For many people, these confirmations arrive during moments when doubt begins to appear. Just when someone begins questioning their path, something small happens that reassures them they are still moving in the right direction. These moments may not answer every question, they may not reveal the entire path ahead, but they often provide just enough reassurance to keep someone moving forward. And over time, these small confirmations can slowly build a deeper sense of trust, a feeling that even though the future may still be unclear, there may be a purpose guiding the process. Because sometimes the clearest guidance does not arrive all at once. Sometimes it appears through small moments that gently remind you that you are still being led forward. The final sign that God may be preparing to change your life is something many people describe as a quiet sense of peace, even when everything around them feels uncertain. On the surface, your life may still look confusing. Plans may still be unclear. Some situations may still feel unstable, and the path ahead may not yet make complete sense. But deep inside, something begins to feel different. Instead of constant fear, there is a strange calmness. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by every problem, there is a quiet belief that somehow things will eventually work out. This kind of peace doesn't always make logical sense. Normally, when people face uncertainty, they feel anxiety. They worry about what might happen next. They try to control every possible outcome, and they struggle with the unknown. But when someone is being guided into a new season of life, many believers describe experiencing something different. Even though they may not fully understand what is happening, something inside them continues to say, "Keep going." That quiet reassurance becomes a powerful signal. It reminds them that the changes unfolding in their life may not be random, they may be part of a larger process that is slowly leading them towards something new. This peace does not remove every challenge, but it creates the strength to continue moving forward, because when God begins preparing someone for transformation, the journey may begin with uncertainty, but it is often accompanied by a quiet confidence that they are being guided exactly where they are meant to go. When all of these things begin happening at once, it can feel overwhelming. People leaving your life, doors closing, moments of struggle and uncertainty, seasons where you feel alone or tested. During those times, it's easy to believe that something is going wrong. But many times, those very moments are the beginning of something far greater than you can currently see. Because before God changes your life externally, He often begins by preparing you internally. He strengthens your faith, He reshapes your perspective, and He guides you away from things that were never meant to be part of your future. The process can feel uncomfortable, it can feel confusing, and sometimes it can feel like everything around you is shifting at once. But those changes are not always meant to break you. Sometimes they are meant to guide you, because transformation rarely begins with certainty. It often begins with a season where the old chapter is slowly coming to an end, while the new chapter has not yet fully appeared. If you are experiencing some of the signs we talked about today, try to remember this. You may not see the full picture yet, but that doesn't mean something meaningful is not unfolding. Sometimes the doors that close today are simply creating space for something better tomorrow. And sometimes the changes that feel the most difficult in the moment are the very ones that lead you toward the life you were always meant to step into. If this message spoke to you today, comment Amen below. And remember, the season you are in right now may not be the end of your story. It may simply be the beginning of something new.